On for our invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lord, we ask your blessing. Lord, we ask your blessings for the people in our community and the places in which we live, work, and play. Help us not ask first, how do we fix this, but what do we need to learn and how might we need to change? And to whom do we need to listen? Grant us the wisdom and the courage to know and do what is right and good and true. May we speak out when it is time to speak out and listen patiently and receptively when it is time to listen. May we always be guided by the spirit of community, by the spirit of justice, and by the spirit of love. This we pray in the name of all that we hold sacred. Amen.
Amen. Tony, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Shaw? Here. Gulick?
Here.
Neese?
Here.
Owen?
Here.
Joy?
Present.
Chariki?
I am here.
Tidswell?
Here.
Purinton?
Here.
Boyette? Here. Rupsis? Here. Mayor Cole?
Here. First order of business are minutes from the April 24, 2023 meeting. Are there changes, questions, motions? Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I move we approve minutes April 24th, 2023.
Thank you very much. Second by Councilmember Tidswell. Any discussion? Seeing none, proceed to a vote. The vote is for approval. Meeting minutes of April 24. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Council courtesies. I'll start us off with the one here. I just want to thank Faith E Church at the corner of 32nd and Central, because on Saturday they had 100 volunteers, a little over 100 volunteers, come out and plant 20 to 30 trees, commemoration of Arbor Day at Centennial Park. And not only did they plant all those trees, which I encourage everybody to admire, the kind of on the line down 32nd, but they also made a financial gift to the city for the next round and offered to be there in the fall and next spring to continue planting trees in Centennial Park. So thank you to them. Councilmember Boyette.
And the 400 students named the new tree Princess Leia.
Not King Boyette. You lost that. Oh, okay. All right, very good. Any other council courtesies this evening? Okay, we don't have any proclamations, council reports. I do have a couple reports. I'll begin with our statement that we've been reading several weeks, and concerning the franchise fee lawsuit. It says, I'd like to provide information regarding the settlement of the franchise fee case. The district court has granted preliminary approval of a settlement of the franchise fee case, Hauser versus City of Billings, DV 2018-0778. If you are a customer of the city's water, wastewater, and/or solid waste disposal services between February 2, 2015 and June 30, 2018, you may be a class member. Information regarding the proposed settlement can be found at the following website, www.cityofbillingsfranchisefeessettlement.com. There are also several copies of the settlement notice for this class action case in the back of the City Council chambers. The court will conduct a fairness hearing in this case at the Yellowstone County Courthouse located at 217 North 27th Street, Billings, Montana, on November 17, 2023 at 9 o'clock in room 414. Also on the back is information on the information that was sent out by postcards that is now being corrected by the settlement administrator. Other reports, I'll give a little bit of an update when we get to this item on the gun ordinance that from the operations committee. And other members of that committee may want to chime in at that point, but we'll hold that until we get to that item. And then lastly, I sent around to all the council members before certificates from the Montana Historical Preservation Society. I had the privilege of representing you on Friday at the Myrna Loy in Helena for the award ceremony for all of the properties that have been recognized by the Montana Historical Society in the last couple of years and added to the historical register, or the National Historical Register. And the city of Billings had two properties in particular. One, the mausoleum at Mountain View Cemetery, which is a fascinating place. It'll be open for anybody who, on Memorial Day, who would like to see the inside. It's a beautiful and architecturally very significant building. And then also Pioneer Park, which has a lot of history and designed by one of the, if not the first female landscape architect in our area who died very young. So very interesting stories. And we had also McKinley School recognized, and the First National Bank building where Rock 31 is, and then the frat building developed by the Burke and Fagg family, the old St. Francis School, who received the Governor's Award for Historic Preservation. And so we had 5 properties out of Billings, which was in Yellowstone County, which was more than any other county by far. So congratulations to yourselves, I guess. So other council reports from other organizations. Councilmember Tricky.
Yeah, so I will never be somebody who ever gets an acronyms right. So the Traffic Safety Committee met last year, and in the conversation with the various different groups represented, we've decided that definitely next year, hopefully beginning with Strawberry Fest, there will be a number of there will be a number of events where we will publicly showcase a lot of the different things that, like, the police department are doing, and the fire department, and probably putting up, like, so there's this thing where you like have a golf cart going around a thing, and you put on some beer goggles and see how that works and stuff like that. But that actually quickly grew into an idea that maybe we would set it up so that all the city departments would have like maybe a street. So that's what we're currently working on right now. So far, the library, the fire department, and Public Works have all said that they would love to be a part of it. So I think I'm kind of excited. I think that will be a very great way for us to engage with the community and have things for kids to have fun and be a draw for Strawberry Fest and all of that.
Great. Thank you very much. Councilmember Puritan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. The Safe Routes to School met this past, well, now it's, I guess, month, but they're moving forward with their plans, and they've got a few more audits to do, and they're still hoping for people to get on the website and check out the places that are having issues with the middle schools and the private schools. So hopefully everyone will get engaged in it. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Any other council reports? Don't see any, so we'll go to our city administrator. Chris, you have anything for us this evening?
2 items briefly, and then I'll add to Councilmember Chiriki's. The most exciting department that's going to have a booth is administration. We know there's going to be kids all over the community that can't wait to see what we do in administration. So actually, I think it is a neat opportunity for us to be out in a space, the organization, where lots of community members are and can share what's going on across the city. So my 2 for you are our next 3 meetings after tonight are all focused on the budget. So tomorrow evening, we're back in this room. Next Monday for our normal time work session, and then again the next day on Tuesday. So May 9, May 15, and May 16 are all dedicated towards the budget. And just a reminder to get those on your Tuesday schedule as well as your Monday. And then the last thing I have is there are no ex parte items to draw to your attention.
Very good. Thank you, Chris. We'll move on then to public comment on non-public hearing items. So tonight, that's everything on our agenda because there are no public hearings later. So if you came to comment on anything on our agenda, including the consent agenda number 1 and all the sub-items, now's your opportunity because we won't have an opportunity later. So please come forward, and we just ask that you tell us your name and your address and keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Kevin Nelson, 4235 Bruce Avenue. This is for item number 4, the council goals and strategies. And more specifically, it has to do with the Parks, Trails, Rec, and cultural investments. And in the red on the second page, it talks about appointing a task force, key stakeholders analyzing partnership opportunities for the Billings Rec Center. And I would agree with that statement that a task force does need to be created. But at the same time, it needs to be created by this body, and most likely the mayor's appointment, or the mayor ought to be the one appointing this body. I would hope it would consist of stakeholders, being the users themselves, certainly some public. And the reason I sort of drew this attention was at the last TIF meeting on the consultant's report, down here at the bottom, it says South Billings Recreation Center. And it went on to say, on April 14th, 2023, Suburra hosted a meeting at the Billings Hotel and Convention Center. Except nobody knew about it. Well, you knew it, and you knew it. And that was about all that knew it. So you had the city of Billings was there, Suburra, the chamber, the TBID, and A&E Architects. And other than that, no one else knew it was even taking place. And I've raised this concern earlier about the TIF board for years, hung out by themselves, taking comment and doing whatever they did for a year without the public out of the public's view. So my concern is, hopefully you would recognize the importance of not having a strong TIF board presence, because in my opinion, they will just do what they've always done and will tend to hide from the public. And I would hope that would not be the case here. So you would take this opportunity to put a pretty broad group together that would have multiple opinions, which I think would probably produce the best outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on any items on our agenda tonight?
Good evening, everyone. I'm here tonight to comment on agenda item number 3. You may remember me. I was here a month ago. My name's Ione Young, and I signed in, so you don't need my address, right? I'm just a concerned citizen of Billings, and I was here a month ago to ask you to take another look at the city ordinance about where guns are prohibited in city buildings. And you did. And you did a great job. Thank you. It is much, much easier to read and understand. And so what I get out of that, the gist of it is that only permitted concealed carry is allowed in city buildings except in 4 restricted areas. And one of those is TSA. So, but during the last meeting, or last time this was discussed a month ago, a couple of members indicated that there probably wouldn't be any signage posted at the entrances of the buildings. And I may have misunderstood that, but I was really puzzled about it. And then the light bulb went on, and it's probably, if they're not posted, they don't have to be addressed. I don't know, but I think there are a lot of Billings citizens who would feel a little more comfortable if they saw a sign posted at the entrance of city buildings. I noticed one tonight as I walk in, that pink piece of paper. Gun violence is still an issue here in Billings. I have not seen any decrease in that, and I tried to do a quick count today of the recent ones, and in the last 2 weeks, there's probably been 4 or 5, a couple of them in city parks. And so I'm just here tonight again to thank you for cleaning up the ordinance. I really appreciate that. because I asked you to do two things, clean up the ordinance, and the second thing is collaborate with the police department, the mental health, other partners to address this growing issue of gun violence in Billings. This is our beloved home, and we want to feel comfortable going different places. I hope that's being addressed, and the citizens of Billings will soon hear what your plans are. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on any item on our agenda this evening? There'll be an opportunity at the very end of the meeting for comment on things not on our agenda. No one's coming forward, no one's online, so we will close the public comment period and move on to item number 1, our consent agenda. And first, I will ask council, are there any items to be separated for a separate vote on the consent agenda? Seeing none, we'll look then for a motion for the consent agenda. Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that we approve the consent agenda for 2023 as written.
Okay, motion made. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Shaw. Okay, motion is for approval. Doesn't cut off debate nor questions. Council members, Councilmember Owen, Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. This is not so much a question, just as a comment, I think, for Council's sort of FYI. One of the items on the consent agenda tonight is the commissioning services of New City Hall. The Budget Committee met on the 26th of April and got an update on how the New City Hall project is going. And it is, they're really doing incredible work. So with Kevin here and with John here, I just really wanted to acknowledge the work they've done. They've continued to do value engineering and are coming in under budget. They've had aggressive bidding and it is working well. They will come as a part of the budget proposal or budget hearings with some ideas of what to do now, what the next steps are. But there's been a significant amount of work that has been accomplished in terms of where we are in the process. And I just really wanted to, even though what's on the agenda tonight is a very small piece of it, just acknowledge the incredibly hard work that's being done by the team to keep this project A, on track, and B, under budget. So that's all.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Neese?
Mayor, you had an email correspondence, I think, on the Benchwater Association about the change. Was that actually, your comment on that, was that incorporated in the contract? Or was that the recommendation to be incorporated?
You're talking about what happens if they go bankrupt?
Yeah.
There was no change made based on that question or comment, but I think it'd be a good opportunity to ask our city attorney who has thought about it and addressed that issue. So if you would like, we can ask Gina.
Yeah, I think so, because I thought an email came to us saying, given this recommendation, I thought we should pull that and then add that recommendation.
Okay, so would you like to separate? Is that what you're saying? Or just, or let's have a little discussion, then you can come back to it. How about that?
Yep.
So with that, Gina and Jennifer DeRay responded to my email, but Gina has also looked at this question. So Gina?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm actually not sure what email Councilmember Neese is referring to with a recommendation. I perhaps missed that, or maybe I'm just missing it. I'm not sure if that came to me or if I'm not seeing which email you're talking about.
And if it was for me, I just raised the question. I didn't actually propose anything. I just said, what happens if they go bankrupt? Is my recollection anyway.
Yeah, that's correct, Mayor. And someone responded, I'm sorry, I was.
Jennifer DeRay.
Jennifer, with a recommended amendment. And so maybe that should be added. We should be changing the agreement on that, unless she said that was already in the agreement.
Jennifer's with us, but I.
Already in there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there
the
was
issue
some.
of it, if it
was my-
that it
I was
runs
asking for
with
the clarification.
with the property.
Right.
It was what she was commenting
Thank
on.
you.
Right, that assignment language, that does already exist in the contract.
So Gina, can you address these questions more generally and the bankruptcy?
With regard to the bankruptcy issue, Mayor, is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, under bankruptcy law, a debtor or a trustee could assume or reject certain kinds of contracts. Typically, a debtor is going to reject a contract or a lease when it's an expense for the bankruptcy estate. in this particular instance, the city's proposed contract with the BBWA would probably be viewed as a valuable asset if they were to file for bankruptcy. It provides significant income for up to 20 years. And we would expect a debtor with this kind of a contract to want to perform and retain that contract because it's not a liability, but rather a source of significant income. Of course, if there were a large judgment against the BBWA, it may have to sell its assets. And in that situation, the contract, again, would likely be considered a valuable asset. So I don't think that, I guess that's just generally what I would have to say about whether this contract would be avoided or invalidated under any potential bankruptcy, if that's the question. If there's more questions, I can try to answer those.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, Council, my point was just asking the question, if the BBWA were to go bankrupt, bankruptcy courts can do pretty much anything they want. It's mostly for the benefit of the creditors. And so this contract that we would have with BBWA is just one of those assets. And in theory, the court could terminate it. I don't have a crystal ball, and Gina's point is probably well taken. You know, we're a source of income. So why would they do that? Why would a bankruptcy court do it? But you just never know. So
Right.
Just FYI, I guess. But while we're on that, I will just call the council's attention and Gina's attention to one point and just kind of make a point to make it clear on the record. So we're talking about item 1C is the proposed contract with the BBWA. And on the second page, under the first paragraph, title under the agreement, the sentence says, this agreement shall automatically renew for successive 3-year terms unless either party provides notice of its intent to amend or terminate to the other party at least 60 days prior to the expiration of any term. So serial 3-year terms, which is fine. Paragraph 11 under default and termination says the term of this agreement shall be for 20 years from the effective date, except that, and then it describes 3 scenarios where the parties can get out of it early. Most importantly, if the other side, breaches the agreement, or if the city wants to build its own pipeline, as long as it gives adequate notice. So I'm just clarifying that those things are not intended to be inconsistent. It's just that there's a series of little 3-year terms within that 20-year package. And I think those can be harmonized. In a perfect world, there probably would have been some reference in paragraph 11 back to the earlier language about 3-year terms, but I think we all understand what's going on. But just so that there's something on the record that those things are not inconsistent. Councilmember Purinton, and we'll stick with this item if we can. Okay, Councilmember Purinton?
So I had a few questions. One of them had to do under number 6, under the maintenance. The BBWA will maintain the canal. So, I mean, it's kind of been my understanding all along that the BBWA has not been maintaining those. What does maintenance mean in this agreement? I know that, I don't know if it's Debbie or I don't know, Jennifer, if one of you kind of explained some of the things that were involved in it, but so that's one of my questions. The other one is, under number 1, it's talking again about that term, good faith. What does good faith mean? I don't know how you define that. Is it defined? And that may be a Gina question. And then Plan B. Are we always looking at Plan B in case this doesn't work? We have a drought. I mean, whatever it is, do we have Plan B in place?
Who would you like? Looks like Jennifer DeRay.
I'll go ahead and take a couple of them, and I'll defer to Gina on one of them. So as far as maintenance, they have been maintaining it with the very limited income that they have. This will actually help that maintenance by increasing their income. Good faith, I'm deferring to Gina. And then your last question was on,
Plan B.
oh, Plan B. This is Plan B. So we're on Plan B.
Okay, what's Plan C? Go back to Plan A?
Plan C would be go back to Plan A, but please remember, we do have another plant too. We are hoping that the BBWA, our Plan B option, works out well enough that we don't ever have to go back to Plan A.
So, Councilmember Parrington, the term good faith, and I'm going to let the mayor and Councilmember Owen jump in if they feel like they want to, but good faith is generally just a legal term that's used that generally just means that the parties are genuinely acting in, using their best efforts, genuine, honest efforts in dealing with others. So it's not usually defined within a contract. It's just a legal term that means that you are genuinely acting in your honest and best, using best efforts. Did that help at all?
Well, it does, but it seems to me like it's really open to interpretation too, at some point. Because, just going back to that maintenance issue, our 100, and that's what was discussed last time, the 150,000 was to help with that maintenance, but to what degree? And how can we hold them accountable to using that 150,000 towards that maintenance? So to me, that's that good faith that you're talking about, but I don't know how we can hold them to that. I know there's a contract, but maybe in good faith, that's what they're thinking they're doing, but in our good faith, it's not, so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Neese?
Mayor, I just want to again disclose, I am a customer of the ditch. I am not a shareholder. I rent, so I have no influence over the ditch people whatsoever, but I'm sure this is going to benefit all us renters of the ditch. So, but I will still continue to vote on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, anything else on this item? Feel free to, we have a motion for approval of the non-separated item, so feel free to go beyond this item or stay with this item. Councilmember Parrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Number 2, with the compliance flare installation. So Jennifer, I don't know if you can answer these questions, but my question was which landfill project was canceled and how did that stand in the priority of the CIP? And then what cost and what is the impact of the cancellation of the project that was canceled?
Councilmember Parrington, what we canceled, or we didn't cancel, we deferred for now and maybe permanently cancel is the MRF building. We're going to do the composting phase 1 first. The MRF was about $5 million and the overage here is about $300,000.
Okay, thank you. Additional questions or discussion on the motion? Okay, if not, we'll proceed to a vote. The motion is for approval of the consent agenda. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Brings us to item number 2 of our regular agenda. Tony, would you read item number 2?
Item number 2, tax increment financing assistance from Downtown Urban Renewal Tax Increment Finance District to Griffin Development for its mixed-use project at 2316 First Avenue North. DBP Board recommends approval.
Thank you very much. I am thinking Mehmet will probably be our presenter, even though Wyeth's name is on this. Is that right, Wyeth?
That's correct.
Okay.
Just need to get things set up so we're sharing the screen and it's available on remote.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Mehmet Casey with the Downtown Billings Partnership, and today I am here for you for a presentation and an update for the Old Town Flats project with the Griffin development. I will at some point also request Max to join me in providing further updates about the project, but I'll start us off here with a bit of a background, just to kind of walk down memory lane. The project was brought up to our attention on September 30th of 2021. Staff reviewed it and the committee reviewed it in October of 2021. Then it was recommended by the partnership board on November 19th, 2021. Then it was approved by council on Valentine's Day last year for the amount you see in front of you, and I believe we were at the community room in the library at the time. Then construction began in November of 2022, and Griffin Development submitted a request for an additional $614,268 in January of 2023. We'll dive into the details of why that is. It was reviewed by staff in February. DBP recommended in March of 2023. So that's what brought us here tonight. The project by the numbers, just again, a bit of a reminder of what was presented to council last year. This column right here says city approved on February 14th of last year. These were the items, the eligible items that were presented to council. Then the following two columns are simply the breakdowns of how it falls under the MCA language. These two particular MCAs that we often cite, and how it translates with the items themselves, the status of these projects, and then the new request. You'll notice the first two, there's a 0 recommendation because those two items are complete now. So we're not reimbursing new work there, even if between the estimate when it was presented and the bid when the work was done, if there was a difference, that's on the applicant. But then the rest of them is the additional allocations per item. And then down here, we did modify the tax rate. I think it was asked at council at one of the presentations in terms of how mixed use with housing is handled in terms of taxes. And so we double checked on that and made sure whether do you use the commercial rate 100% or the residential rate 100% or a hybrid of the two. And so we double checked that, and it's likely a hybrid. So that's why the modification here changed a little bit, which did change the ROI a little bit based on that. I believe in 2020, we projected a 14-year return. Now it's 16 if we're pursuing the hybrid. So with that, it'll take us to the first of 4 pictures that I have. So here is where I'll invite Max Griffin to talk a little bit about what was the impetus of the ask, coming back and asking for a modification. And then the pictures will show a current, what is happening right now at the site, and the rendering of what it should look like and what is happening on that space as well. So with that.
Good evening, everyone. Max Griffin, Griffin Development, 1655 Valley Heights Road. We are the developer on the project, if you remember. What you're seeing here, the amendment is showing you is the final plans of what we're building. This has been a project that's had a lot of community input. One of them was to retain that 100-year-old brick wall across the front by a renowned architect here in town. We've had great input from lots of folks, lots of help from people to try to get us this project going. Our problem is that construction costs have just exploded. We are $4 million over budget from a budget that we established a year and a half ago. And that's disappointing to us, to say the least. So where we're at on this project is right now is our projection to complete is August 1st, 2024. Right now we have put the foundation in, we put the parking garage floor in, we're starting up with the exterior walls on the first floor, which is the parking garage. but we're just running into a whole bunch of difficulties on getting this project completed. And so that's the real crux of the issue that we have before us. We think it's a great project. We're trying to figure out a way to complete it. Yeah, this front picture is that brick wall that we're retained. And we love it. Construction guys hate it because they've been working around it since day one. And it's caused a whole bunch of problems, but we think it was worthwhile to maintain that. What you're seeing in the picture up above it there is the east side on west side. That would be west facing side on North 23rd. You'll see the parked car there. That's where the entrance to the parking garage is. The project is exactly as presented in the original project, 36 units, 36 inside parking spaces with it. That's a better shot from the North 23rd side. And the lower picture is where we're at pretty much today. That is the alley side. That was one of the community inputs, was that, not particularly that art you're seeing there, but art on those garage doors. And what we've done is we've really lit up that whole alley side back there so that to try to make sure that it feels like a safe environment for everybody. And if you look up at the top there, you'll see the black on the stair tower up there. That's a project in progress. We're not sure. We'd love to do some art up there, but budget restraints, we're really feeling the pinch on doing that or not.
And Max will be here for further questions if you have specific questions for the project. But with that, the Downtown Billings Partnership Board recommends approval of the additional request in the amount of up to $614,268, supporting identified eligible project expenses. The actual reimbursement will be based upon 100% of the actual costs incurred for the qualified expenses. Applicant shall sign an amendment or an addendum to the previously executed development agreement with the City of Billings and Downtown Billings Partnership within 180 business days of City Council's decision tonight. If funds are not available for whatever reason, reimbursement can be carried forward to future fiscal years. And with that, I'll open up to comments, questions, concerns, and again, I'll start them off, but applicant is available too.
Thank you, but I'll just start with kind of the 800-pound gorilla in the room, which is, there's only so much money. And so the staff report ends with the last couple sentences say the increased funding for this project will likely, and nobody doubts that we all understand the reality of what's happened with construction pricing, but says the increased funding of this project will likely limit future projects based upon the current estimates of the downtown district revenues. Present cash flow projections show future years' cash position for the downtown district as negative. These projections are based upon conservative revenue estimates and approved projects anticipated to be completed. So I just wonder if you can comment a little bit about the discussion by the downtown partnership and how they weighed these conflicting needs to help a great existing project that needs to get completed and what might be coming down the road in future years. Could you just address that?
Certainly, yeah. I'll try to be as brief as possible. It was a very lively discussion, I would say, among the board, and city staff is usually there too. But as the memo indicates, one of the key components that reflects that conservative projection is our continuation of projecting zero growth in our district. And quite frankly, my board is not a fan of that. They would like us to project anywhere between 1 to 3 at least %, so that you can actually anticipate how much more you can commit or not. But as we've all seen, staff and city staff, I think with how unusual that formula can appear, it seems to be the most one that seems to make sense when planning conservatively, especially when we're hit with the centrally assessed properties and some other things that may come from the state. So ultimately, we decided to continue with the zero growth projection. But for the board, it still answers the priorities that we have in terms of delivering mixed use with residential and housing, with housing and retail. It still complies with all the guiding documents. And ultimately, also, we discussed the fact that, and by we, I mean the board, the fact that at the end of the day, the developer signs understanding that this is a risk they're taking, because as the documentation indicates, let's say down the road in FY27, when they're expecting to receive their second or third reimbursement, we don't have that fund for whatever reason, then they don't get a reimbursement that year and it gets pushed to the next year. So with that in mind, they recommend approval.
Okay, thank you very much. Other questions? Councilmember Purington and Shaw?
Thank you. So a couple of questions, one of them being just what you said, Mehmet. If payment to, on the TIF increment, or not the TIF increment, the TIF dollars, if it's not paid out in a timely manner to Mr. Griffin, then what sort of financial encumbrance does that make for him, whether it's loans to be paid back or whatever? I'm not sure how that works when you say, well, we can't pay you this year, maybe next year. So I'm not sure how that works.
I don't know who to refer to with that question, but I mean, as it stands, I don't know off the top of my head of any sort of precedence that had happened. But again, the language in the agreement is very clear from the legal standpoint, and all three parties are signing in accordance of that. So that would be, I think, a risk on the private sector. Sounds like maybe Chris
I can speak to it broadly, which is, and we have been here before with the Alberta Bear Theater. So we cannot guarantee what our tax revenue is. And so part of the risk on the developer side is if we don't actually have the cash, we can't pay it. So then it provides a mechanism to extend it out. So yes, absolutely worst case scenario, if the revenue is not there, the developer understands the payment cannot be made until the cash exists by the local government. And that's just one of those realities that we've had to learn from past experiences with the reality of, as Mehmet mentioned, with our centrally assessed properties downtown, we tend to see double-digit decreases or increases based on centrally assessed. So we wanted to be very clear in the agreements, and this is not unique to this agreement. I think we've been using this term now for the last several, that this is a risk you need to be aware of as the developer.
So my other question, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
In the minutes from your board meeting, there was some concern about setting a precedent. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, certainly. So one of the questions was, does this open the door for other former applicants who have received a certain award and may say, okay, construction costs have gone up for us as well? And the differentiation here for the board was that the fact that this project, with the exception of the red brick that's being retained, is essentially new construction in the downtown. That's the first in decades. So it was identified as something of a catalytic nature that is not precedented. And it's going to be a learning experience for all of us anyways. And they wanted to continue to encourage this type of development and lead to more potentially on the same lot as well as across the street and the surrounding neighborhood.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Shaw and then Boyette and Owen and Reednese.
Thank you. This item doesn't have a public hearing, so I'm going to go ahead and put a motion on the table. I move to conditionally approve the tax increment financing assistance from Downtown Urban Renewal Tax Increment Finance District to Griffin Development for its mixed-use project at 2316 First Avenue North, as recommended by the DBP Board.
Okay, motion is for approval. Councilmember Ripsis, I saw first. Councilmember Shaw, did you want to speak to your motion?
Yes, I actually have a question for Mr. Griffin, if you'd come up, please, sir. So I want to preface this by saying I'm for housing of all stripes. We need all of it. We need the rentals, we need single family, we need everything. Obviously, I'm supportive of your project. I think it's important, and I do think it's a catalytic project for the downtown. It's very exciting. Would you talk to us just a little bit about why you chose not to condo this building, and if that is in the works for phase 2? I think what we've seen a lot is we've approved a lot of TIF funding for rentals, and it's great. The downtown needed. But we also kind of have this gap of we just don't have an ability for a lot of people to kind of buy into the market at that level. I'd love to see developers such as yourself kind of moving in that direction, or at least doing some of that. So I'd like to hear from you just about if that's in the works for phase 2, or what made you move away from that for this building.
You know, you're correct. Phase 2, we would look at condos, either all of it or part of it. We looked at it for this project as well, and the feeling was that condos mixed with rentals was not a good fit. And the people we talked to says either go condos or go rentals 100%. We had another project that we had to terminate on 6th Avenue that was going to be a condo project, addressing specifically what you're asking for. If you remember, when we came before you, this is our first time in trying something like this. It's the first time this happened in Billings in 60 years, and so it's been a learning curve for us, sometimes very painful learning curve, but yeah, I agree. There's definitely a huge demand for condos, as you saw with the FAG project, that they sold those out immediately. So yeah, we love to go in that direction. We just have one mountain to get over to get there.
I totally understand, and I appreciate that, and I'm excited about that. And just to say, we also understand construction costs are going up. We're trying to build out a new city hall that has had the same challenges in trying to stay on budget. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Boyette and Owen and Neese.
Thank you. Mehmet, let's say this doesn't pass tonight. Will this project fail or continue to go ahead? That would be the bottom line. Is it still going to work if we don't give them the money, or will it fail because we won't give them the money?
Did you want to address that? Okay.
You know, right now, there's 3 things that will torpedo this project. Continuing interest rate hikes, economy slowing down nationwide, which we're seeing. We're seeing a 70% reduction in listings in this region from what we saw in 21, and construction costs increase. Those are the 3 things that we're fighting, that we've been fighting for the last time. We're doing the same thing that you folks are doing with your project. We're beating prices to death. We're looking for every nickel we can get. We're scratching, we're pinching and saving. Do I say, I hope it doesn't fail, but we could end up with another parking garage downtown. It's about where we're at.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Neese. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Owen. And then Councilmember Neese? No, Councilmember Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I really like this project, and I want this project to succeed, but I'm struggling a little with this second ask. So I'm going to just ask a couple of maybe unpleasant questions. Just know that they're done in the spirit of transparency. The minutes that are submitted as a part of the council packet indicate that you guys are changing, or that the DBP is recommending restructuring the reimbursement so that you can hit your metrics, which is a little concerning. So walk me through that rationale of why you're choosing to extend the payout period just to be able to hit that 7-to-1 metric.
Gotcha. No, yes, Councilmember Owen, thank you for that. I did forget to mention in the presentation that part of the recommendation, the original award was granted over the course of 5 years to be reimbursed in 5 years. With the addition, it was recommended that you stretch it over 6 years so that we continue to have projection further and not dip into negative projections. If we were to keep it in 5 years, it would certainly further limit the availability of cash for future potential projects.
Because what you're saying sounds quite different than the minutes. What you're saying seems like a cash flow management question.
Yeah.
And what the minutes seem to say is we're going to try to game this so it looks like it's still a good return on investment.
No, my recollection was that in the board, the talk was about the ratio staying the same because the total project went up from 11 plus mil to 15 plus mil. So with the award potentially going from 1.6 to 2.3, it may seem like we're asking for more, but the whole project is going more, so it's maintaining the ratio. I'll have to review the minutes to see if that was misconstrued.
If you want to send something in writing, just to follow up, that'd be great. Just a couple quick questions, Mayor. I recall from the first presentation that the idea for phase two, the condo phase, is that they wouldn't be built till they were sold, I think.
I'm sorry?
That the condos themselves would not be built until they were sold. There would be sort of a pre-sale effort here. But do you all have concerns that we're going to see yet another TIF ask for the phase two of this project?
Gotcha. That hasn't been discussed at this point, although there isn't any language that prohibits applicants from coming back with like a different project, or in this case, a phase two of this project. So in theory, for example, if the Griffin development came forward with phase two and a new ask, they would go through the same review process of staff, committee, board, recommendation or not.
And does the board have concerns about sort of getting in too deep with one single project?
Not at this moment, with all the lack of housing and the prioritization of that as gaining that momentum towards that.
And then my last question is really about that same risk management concept. As we look at the budget for fiscal year '24, we're going to see some ugly spikes in insurance and some of those costs. But some of the construction costs are going down. Both the Inner Belt Loop and Skyline Trail came in at or a little bit under bid, and so far our City Hall is a little bit under bid as well. So there's instability. It's not all an upward trajectory, and yet what we're seeing here is entirely an upward trajectory, assuming that all costs are going up and that nothing is going down. And that's not consistent with what we're seeing, at least in our budget proposal. So I guess my toughest question, Mehmet, is how do you all guard against the possibility that this project was just underbid or underscoped in the first place? I guess I'm trying to make sure we're not gaming a system here. I'm concerned that maybe the first ask came to us at a lower amount than they really needed for fear that council wouldn't approve a larger amount, and then sort of a hope that we'll just come back later and ask again. And I just want to make sure we're not seeing any gaming of the system here. I want to make sure we understand the real risks, the real costs, that we're being fully transparent, even acknowledging that this is a hard project.
Yeah, certainly, no. And again, from my perspective and from the board's perspective, I can assure you that this was all coming to us as it became news. But if I may.
I would love to hear.
Yeah, I think Max has shared with the board his perception in terms of why the contingency has been so different on this project versus others.
Great question. It's given me a lot of sleepless nights coming back to ask again. And it was not something I certainly would not game the system. I appreciated the original ask. When we're doing cost estimates, we try to be as diligent as we possibly can and make sure that our numbers are good. And we bought this in 2019. We did our due diligence all of 20, came back in 21 with a concept that we thought. We put a large contingency on the pricing to say that should get us where we need to be. We talked to architect, we talked to general contractors. We do a whole bunch of due diligence on that. But I'll give you an example of when we got where we are. We said, why the heck is this costing so much? And so we went back and we looked at, if we built this apartments, let's say on the west end, and most of those are 2 stories with a ground level parking lot, we saw that ground downtown is $30 a square foot. Ground on the west end is $10. Parking lot costs about $9 a square foot. Parking garage costs $2 million. Then we had the demo and asbestos cleanup to go along with that. But the one that kind of tripped us up, and I should have known, I should have been brighter, is the fact that when you build in a confined area and you build vertically, it simply costs more, about 15% more. So that added another $1 million to the project. And we've seen it already. If you've come down First Avenue, concrete truck come, you block a lane, right? Materials come, you block a lane. And as you go up with construction, moving people and materials up each floor raises the cost. So what we're finding out from the research we did, if you're going to do a downtown project that's going to be multi-story, it's going to cost you about 40% more than it will to build the apartments that you're seeing on the West End. And that's the hard reality of where we're at. So, did I answer your question?
Sort of, yeah. How much risk do you anticipate? I mean, it's sort of hard to know what you don't know, but what are the risks that you'll be back for a third ask?
For a third? Well, I think council could handle that by saying no, right?
But I want to understand what you're seeing, what you don't, what are the potential risks that this will continue to struggle?
If the project continues to go up, and I agree with you, we're seeing material pricing, lumber, CDX, $16 a sheet. That was almost $40 at one point. So we're seeing lumber prices coming down. What we're not seeing coming down is HVAC equipment, which is a year out, electrical service gear, which is 9 months out. We've already ordered the electrical service gear with any hopes of getting it at all done. So the risk, when you say to us, if we do this, we're not coming back, okay? And if you deny us, we'll still appreciate what you did.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Neese?
Thank you, Mayor. I do have some questions for Max.
Nope. I just stay there. It'll be easier.
I'll get a closer seat.
Thanks, Max. And some of the questions I had were answered, and I appreciate it. And I think you said you had not done this type of project before. You typically do stick-built? Do I understand that?
No, we do commercial.
You do commercial, okay, but not high-rise?
No.
Commercial. So this is your first high-rise, okay. And so that's interesting to hear how it's more expensive to build downtown. And we always hear it's better, there's a lot of cost there, but not the additional cost for building to go up. So I am concerned about, I think, the costs, but in coming back. So have you considered things like the city, we've talked about this too, building out the city hall, but leaving, sections of it not built, shells, ready to build later on. Have you looked at that, and would that make the project viable to continue to build, have some apartments built and operational running, bringing income in, and then build it off as the money comes in?
The problem is in this type of construction, especially high-rise or mid-rise, is the fact that if you build up and stop here and you have 2 empty floors above it, you have to take all that construction material through a finished space. And the honest reality of it is that all the years I've done this, I've never seen overall cost, go down substantially after a huge increase like we've seen here. We're going to see a downward trend a little bit, but you're never going to see labor go down. And so you very rarely are going to see materials go down. And so my feeling is if you build it, finish it, because it's going to cost you a lot more the second go around. And I think that will apply even to your city offices.
Okay, thank you, Max. And I do have a question for Mayor.
Sure. I just want to make the point that there were 2 costs that did go down significantly on this TW Clark. Unfortunately, they're quite small items, but they are government fees and permits are only about 2/3 of what were estimated, and the city's system development fees are similarly about 20% less than anticipated, or 25%. So it's not correct that everything went up. Councilmember Neese.
We need to fix that.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Mehmet, this is a project that I really like, and I'm excited about seeing this be built and get finished. And so I'm going to support this. I think that we need to move it forward. And my concern is, though, the asks come to us the first time. By saying it's not going to be a precedent, I don't think that's true. I think we're going to have people come to us, and I hope that you do something to maybe in the review process to learn from Max on this. Is, hey, the building downtown is more expensive, and we really need to have people look at these estimates to make sure they're, for what is happening here, comes to us the first time they're right. And so I don't know what you guys will do in your process, and I'm not a builder, I'm not an architect, I'm not a contractor, but I know that you guys have to review that and bring it to us, and I hope that you learn from this as well, that we can have these things come to us a little bit different. But I guess that's not a question, it's more, well, I guess it is a question. What do you see in this, and how do you think this will change some of the way you guys do your process?
Certainly, yes. We are already having these conversations at the board level, and if anything gets formalized in the application process, obviously that'll stay in-house, but if any of it carries over to the development agreement, we'll be in touch with city staff to make sure that it's consistent among all 3 TIF districts. But it is, for us, this is the first of its kind in that nature. So that's why we didn't have any precedent process for it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll just comment that if this is approved, that we really don't have a mechanism for making sure the project actually comes out to $15.1 million. So on the chance it came in less, the money's already gone out the door. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess my point is that if that were to happen, I'm assuming that the downtown business, the partnership will be tracking that. And, of course, those dollars still have to go to only authorized costs, but there's a lot of other costs that are out there. So the total project could come in less than that. If it does, I sure hope that Griffin Development comes back for phase 2. But we'll take a discount off anything we give then, because we're going to want a credit for that. And I do, in all seriousness, I do hope you'll track that so that we know what the end result here, if this is approved. It is a unique project. The issue of a precedent is a very real one, I think. But this one is unique because it is the door to downtown east. The location is really critically important, I hope, to open the door on future development east of the core of downtown. And then also, of course, it is brand new and the first new housing in at least 50 years, I suppose. We need to figure out when the last new housing actually was constructed so we get the statistic right, but it's the first time in a long time. Other comments on the motion? Councilmember, also Councilmember Rips has come back. Councilmember Purington, I think you had some questions earlier.
I just wanted to give him a chance there, because if the project actually comes in lower, we reimburse based on actual costs, not on the projected costs. So we wouldn't be getting ahead of ourselves and paying out more. We don't pay anything until the project is completed and receipts are submitted.
Correct, and we do track that too, Mayor. But just historically, under my tenure since May of 2019, totals of projects have always gone up, starting with the property where the Wise Wonders was. That was my first presentation. And so, but we do track it.
Yeah, and on these items, and certainly that's the case. It's just, my point is there's other elements in the project that are not included in these items that are reimbursable. Councilmember Purington?
Couple of things. Then on the utilities, and there is $168,000 in addition, but some of the work has already begun. So how does that play out with? I mean, I look at this almost as an extension, I guess, of what the ask was before, but then all of a sudden it's going to cost this much more money. Does that truly have a place with what we're saying, that it doesn't, usually we don't base any of those costs on construction that's already started?
We do track that, yes. Thank you so much for bringing that as well. It's just, it's hard to put in all this complexity and detail into a presentation and keep it as a smooth presentation. But yeah, the 2 items that have actually begun are the plumbing items and the sewer drainage items. And so the additional contributions would only go to the gas and electrical, which hasn't begun yet. And all of the utilities that are being contributed to are the connections of the property to the main lines on the street or the alley side. not necessarily the individual units, because then that's just the private sector responsibility. So just a further clarification of what that actually funds.
Thank you. And just a comment. My first year on council, I went to one of Big Sky EDA's meetings, annual meetings. And one of the things that I learned then was one of the contractors that had done quite a bit of business in Billings for many years. He made the comment, he said, I won't build downtown because it's too expensive. And so he has built on the west end, which was less. And so I think it was interesting that Mr. Griffin, kind of made those comparisons. So I guess my question, it's not a question, because I don't expect you to answer it. But how can we look at making the downtown more affordable for developers to come in and build without having, and I know a lot of it is demolition and probably asbestos abatement, but I'm just concerned when I heard that I thought, because I never hear any conversation about how can we make downtown more affordable. We want to revitalize it, but yet, what are we doing to make that happen? So if you have a comment back, that's great. If not, that was my comment. Thank you.
I have a lot, but that might be a whole meeting.
Yeah, Councilmember Gulick? And we don't have the whole meeting. Councilmember Gulick, you get half the meeting.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to make another comment, but I'll just to respond to your question too. I think downtown buildings tend to be 100-year buildings or longer. They're more more durable, last longer. That means they have a longer service life. They're contributing to the taxable value. They have more taxable value that endures. And so, and our building codes to some degree require that as well. So that is a factor. You will find that the quality of construction means that they are more expensive. And so thus the financing sources, a 20-year commercial loan doesn't work on a project like that in a way that it does for housing and a lot of other parts of that are built. And so we look for other types of financing mechanisms that have a longer time period. This project is one that I think is really important. No one's real happy, I'm sure, including Max, that it's at this place. I think I'm conflicted. We want to incentivize innovation and the most resourceful use of the public funds possible. If we do give money here, that means there's less money for other projects. Speaking as someone in the industry, though, what we've experienced has been very unprecedented, and so, if the estimates, we're basing this on estimates that were made a couple years ago, basically, and if Max had come forward with the proposal now, it would have been not much higher. It would have been the same kind of match, and we would have been in the same place we are, where we would look to do like a 1-to-7 match or 6 match. And so I think I will be supporting this. I'm going to continue to look for, there are different ways of developing when you're downtown as well. We're looking to do some development of new construction as well, and parking is a big part of it. So we're looking for other strategies so we don't have to spend the money there. But I think I'm supportive of this project, and I will support this motion.
Thank you very much. Councilor, are we ready to vote, or is there any other debate? Okay, we'll proceed to a vote then. The motion is for approval consistent with the recommendation. If in favor, say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay. Nay. I think I heard Councilmembers Tidswell and Purington. All others were in favor, correct? So the motion passes 9-2. Thank you very much. We'll be ready for phase 2 or not. Brings us to item number 3. Tony, would you read item number 3?
Item number 3, second reading ordinance amending Billings, Montana City Code, Section 18-204, prohibiting weapons and firearms. Staff recommends approval.
Thank you very much. While Gina's taking the podium, I'll just comment, and I'll give the opportunity for the other members of the local operations committee. We did meet to go over proposed changes to the gun ordinance here, and I think the goal was multi-pronged, but I think the result was to clarify the ordinance, which was certainly a goal, and to simplify it a bit without really changing the actual end result of what you saw before. You'll see in the staff report that Gina's recommendation is that there'll be another hearing, even if this one is approved. There'll be a third hearing because there was a substantial enough change that we need to give the public plenty of opportunity there. The committee also wanted to stick with the language of the authorizing statute. Rather than trying to use different language, whatever they said, we'll maybe in court at some point have to figure out exactly what was meant by the legislature's use of certain terms, but we didn't feel it was our place to vary from that. That means that there's probably still some issues that are out there that'll have to get sorted out at some point, like where does the building end? What does it mean to be publicly owned? For example, Montana law has like 6 different estates and property where you can own a lease, but kind of the common or the layman's view would be ownership means fee simple. Is that what was meant here? So rather than trying to determine that as best we could, we just left it alone, stuck with the existing statutory language, and then we'll have to figure that out, or the city administrator will have to figure that out, or the courts will have to figure out some of that out in the future, at some point in the future. So anyway, just want to give you that overview. But before I turn it over to Gina, council members Neese or Boyette. Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, this was a good discussion. My goal was to make it simple that a normal, just an average person could read it and say, this is what it says. I think at one point it was too confusing. So the object was to keep it simple and basically follow the state law. I mean, that's what the state tells us to do, but I think this is a much clearer, easier to understand.
Thank you. Councilor Neese, anything for me?
I would echo those comments. I think that the idea was my goal was to make sure it follows the state. We didn't want to vary, stray from that. That always causes problems and causes legislature to create new laws to really regulate us further. And then I agreed this, when I read it, it was very difficult to understand. And so this is, I think, when you read it, as we heard from public testimony, it was easy to understand. She correctly quoted exactly where she thought it could be carried, and that's good to hear, that it's understandable, so.
Okay, thank you. We'll turn it over to Gina. Thank you, Gina, for your efforts on this. And just to remind anybody, the version we're actually talking about is the last version in your packet. That's the clean version. There's a red line version before that and lots of other versions before that. But if you want to just jump to the chase, the last copy of the ordinance in your packet is the proposed clean version. So Gina.
Thank you, Mayor. And yes, it does appear to be confusing with all the drafts, all the copies attached to the packet, but your city code does require you to see what the original version was and what the new version is, and has to clearly and legibly show the changes by underlines and strikeouts. So it does get a bit confusing, and I apologize for that. And that's why we attach red line version and clean copies so that it's for your ease of reading. So again, I've attached the original version that's currently in effect, and then I attached the version that was passed on first reading on March 27th. And as the mayor indicated, the last 2 attachments are the proposal before you today. One's redlined and one's clean. So if you look at that last one, it's the clean copy. So the first major change from the version that passed on first reading and what is being proposed to you today are some recitals in the ordinance. These will not be codified, but they are just the whereas clauses, which explain why this ordinance is being passed. It provides the statutory authority for local governments, as well as the limitations and restrictions of local governments, and as well it sets forth the constitutional right of
any person to keep or bear arms in defense of his own home, person, or property. So those are the first, I think, about 6 whereas clauses, 6 recitals that are at the beginning of the ordinance. Again, those will not be codified in city code, but those are there by way of explanation. And then, as you can see in the first subsection of the section 18-204, there was some changes. Oh, just to clarify, again, this presentation is limited strictly to the changes. I'm not going over any substance that we talked about on March 27th. So if you have any questions about that, please let me know. But I'm just comparing for you what the changes that have been made from March 27th to today. So 18-204 subsection A is the definitions section, and there were some changes made from the first version. A definition of building was added. There was a definition of city facility that was changed to city building and modified slightly. There were additional definitions provided for concealed weapon, and under concealed weapon, there are subsections that clarify what a permitted concealed weapon is and what an unpermitted concealed weapon is. And then finally, a definition of unconcealed weapon was added, which is obviously the open carry, which is commonly known as open carry. The next, the biggest change here is to the prohibition section, which is subsection B. And as you can see on the left is the first version, which is just a big long paragraph, which confused everybody, was not written as well as I could have written. So that was broken up and some clarifying language inserted. As you can see, it's much easier to read. It clarifies the prohibitions by, it separates them out. In the first one is the open carry. The second is unpermitted concealed in any city building is permitted, or excuse me, is prohibited. And then 3 sets forth that a person with a valid permit to carry a concealed firearm is prohibited from carrying concealed firearm in those restricted areas, which is a courtroom that's in use by a court, areas in use by municipal court pursuant to a court order, and then like BPD, the secure areas of law enforcement, or the secure areas of a publicly owned commercial airport. And then obviously the last section is that this doesn't apply, these prohibitions don't apply to law enforcement. And then the last few changes are the subsection C, which was in the March 27 version, that set forth the signage requirement. That was just simply deleted altogether, so as to not provide any confusion or any challenges for people. If they don't see a sign, then they're to wonder if it really doesn't apply, because basically when laws are passed, when ordinances are passed, there doesn't need to be signage. So we just avoided any confusion about that and deleted it altogether. Subsection D is the last section that set forth the screening. This wasn't changed at all, if I recall correctly. We simply broke it out into sections just for ease of reading, just to make it a little bit clearer and easier to read. So those are it. Those are the changes. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Gina. And here I'll just comment on the signage section since it was raised by Ms. Young back there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is the goal was, by deleting it, not to say we didn't want to have signage, but to avoid somebody being able to use the absence of signage as an excuse.
Yes.
And
yes.
Signage is still probably a really good idea. But we'll leave it up to the city administrator and others to determine exactly where and how. But we recognize the value of signage.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for that clarification. That's exactly right. I anticipate that signs will be posted various places throughout City Hall, the entrances, in the areas where there are the regulations in place, up in front of the courtroom here, various places. So there will be signage It's just precisely what you said, to avoid any confusion about the absence of signage.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Owen?
Gina, I just have a couple questions, and these might not be very great questions, but I just want to make sure I understand. So this ordinance will prohibit open carry and unpermitted concealed carry, right?
Correct.
The definition of building seems to conceive of something more than just an ordinary building, because there's a reference here to mobile or portable. So is building a building, or is building a mobile structure, like, for example, a Met bus?
For example, a what?
A Met bus.
Oh, no, I would not think a bus would be considered a building. That's a vehicle, that's mobile, it's got an engine and wheels, it's not, that would not be considered a building. But I think perhaps what this is referring to is a mobile building that's brought in, set on site, and that can be picked up and later moved. So it's really supposed to be a building as a building.
In the way we commonly understand building?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So just to be clear, we are prohibiting open carry or unpermitted concealed carry at the Met transfer station, but not on the Met bus. Is that right? Because we don't have any authority on the Met bus.
That's correct.
Okay. So.
Yes.
So people should just know, if they're going to have a weapon on a bus, they can't get off at the transfer station, right? Can't go inside.
They may be there for years.
Right. The mobile caught my attention. I understand the concept of a mobile building, but I just wanted to understand how it might impact our mobile facilities that are not buildings.
Yes, yes.
Okay, my next question. There is a sentence here in screening that says a city may, in the discretion of its employees, deny entrance into a city building. Is that denial in the moment, or does it conceive of us creating sort of a no entry list? You know, repeat offenders who are just told you're not allowed to enter this building?
It is intended to be the moment.
Okay.
Yes. So if somebody were to come to the courtroom or somewhere to a particular area where they cannot bring a weapon in there, they're going to be denied access.
But
If,
not,
for the violation of the ordinance, not necessarily
no long-term consequence to that, just simply you can't come in until you address this weapon.
Right.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Gina? Or motion relating to item number 3? Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you. If I can get it on. I move to approve the second reading ordinance amending Billings, Montana City Ordinance Section 18-204, prohibiting weapons and firearms as recommended by staff.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Neese. Any further discussion on the motion? Councilmember Neese, Councilmember Joy.
Mayor, I think we worked hard on this to follow the state law. I think there's going to be a lot of concern over this, both sides of this issue of guns. And whether it's the U.S. Constitution or the state Constitution, we have to follow the law. And I think this ordinance has done a good job doing that. My personal opinion may be that, I would like to have seen different changes in here, and we talked about them during our meeting, and I think this is accurately following the law. And so I'll support this because that's what it's doing. I think there are some things that we need to do. If people want to change this ordinance, it has to be, because we're following the state law, it has to be changed at the state level. So Councilmember Owen brought up a good topic about we have city buses, and it's not addressed in the state law. But what is addressed in the state law is we as a city cannot address it. And so that's an issue that needs to be done at the state level to give us permission to do something like that if the city chooses to do that. So just to bring up as issues come up, remember, that's why one of the reasons I wanted to see those whereases in that clause is because that really tells us what we can or we cannot do. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Joy?
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and I appreciate the Operations Subcommittee doing the work to put this together, and I appreciate the public comment in terms of a feeling that this is better, more understandable. I don't think our whereases section, and I appreciate Councilmember Neese's consideration that the whereases are to define what that legislation says to us in terms of what we can and cannot do. The whereases seem very political. They seem very stifling in that they're very, it's what the legislature gave us to work with, but the whereases seem a little bit, they seem very political. And this legislature is not the last legislature we'll ever have. They have spoken, and it probably won't even last 2 years. So I don't see this as I see this ordinance as our attempt to deal with what the state legislature has done, but this is not a document that's going to last a very long time, because this is an active area of continuing changes in public policy. So I don't disagree with it or anything, and I appreciate the idea. The idea is that we state in these whereases exactly what it is that the legislature has given to us. But I think it's an area of active public policy where there'll be many changes coming forward. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Councilmember Trickey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Given that we're going to be going through this one more time, I will amend my remarks and make them a lot shorter than what I was going to say. I continue to agree that we have to be in sync with state law, and if that's all this was, I would vote for it in a heartbeat. It's not. It is a statement about where you can take and openly have a gun. And some of those places are very dangerous places for other people. This is not about whether or not you can have a gun. It's about where you can be carrying a gun, which is a very significant difference. There are two things that have happened here in Billings, and I'll talk about them more at another time, but the one that personally scared me the most was during the George Floyd demonstrations that were going on here in Billings 3 years ago. There were armed citizens with long rifles on the streets corners all around the protest. And my question is, what would have happened if both sides had shown up with guns? What would have happened if a car backfired? Not that cars backfire anymore, but, you know, a loud sound happened like that, and someone freaked out and pulled out their gun and fired again. It is not, we learned 150 years ago in the state of Montana that it's not safe for everybody to be running around with guns. Own them? Sure. Be responsible with them? Absolutely. Open carry in public? I cannot vote for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comment on the motion before we proceed to a vote? Okay, we will move to a vote. We'll just do it verbally. The motion is for approval of the ordinance you have in your packet. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Voting in opposition were Councilmembers Chiriqui, Councilmember Tidswell, and Councilmember Purington. So the motion passes 8-3. Thank you very much. That concludes item number 3. Tony, would you read item number 4, please?
Item number 4, adoption of FY 23-24 City Council goals and strategies.
Chris.
Mayor and council, I'm not sure whether we'll get to put them on the screen or not. That's what we're kind of working on, but you've had the draft. I dated it, highlighted, just because so many things has tweaked. April 27th draft. This essentially, the lion's share of what you have is the city council goals and strategies were what were adopted essentially, actually almost to the date a year ago. And through some additional work that happened during our city council and department director retreat, March 31 and April 1, the goal was, or the approach was to update this document. Nothing says it has to be updated. I've had fruitful conversations with some of you, all of you, but some who feel we really don't need to adjust it, keep with what we have. My simple point would be to frankly turn it back to you. It's on the agenda. It doesn't have, nothing says it has to be adopted this evening, but frankly, until we find ourselves in a meeting where it's on an action item, not a whole lot was moving or a lot of feedback was being given. So it helps. I just emphasize whatever you do choose to do. If you don't adopt something, we'll continue to diligently work on what is adopted and in front of us. If you make adjustments and adopt something different this evening, these things provide all of us, I don't think just me, all of you as well, with some direction in the upcoming 12, 18, 24 months. So I'll leave it at that, and happy to answer any questions or see how you want to move forward on this document. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. We'll go this way. Councilmember Purinton-Nice-Shaw.
Thank you. I don't know where to start. I guess we'll start with improve the safety of Billings. So in the past, most of our safety in Billings has been with public safety regarding crime. So some of the things that came out of our retreat had to do with activating CPTED principles with the Parks Department in various parks in order for people to participate better. The other one was the ACE scores, to reduce ACE scores. Another one was build trust with our Native American communities. I just wanted to look at those because I'm sure others will have it. So just sticking with improving the safety of Billings. I thought we had kind of agreed when we were at our retreat that I don't know that there's anything that we as council can do to reduce the ACE scores. I think that was something that we were looking at with the schools. I know that we were looking at the nurse partnerships, and if that's our goal within that element, okay, I think that should be spelled out. Building trust with our Native American community. We did quite a bit on that element, and I think building trust is way too subjective. I don't know how we do that. I would encourage, if we want to keep that in our, in that one element of safety of Billings, is that we need to engage. And I think that was one of the things that Denise had talked quite a bit about too, was, to increase our engagement. So building trust, that's really out there. I don't know how you do that. So those are two of my comments on there. I think we also should be putting in the safe routes to school strategies, and I'll let someone else talk for a while.
Okay, just to summarize there, your point about the ACE scores was in a sentence. What was that again?
Well, I think we decided, I thought we discussed this, that city council in and of itself won't be reducing those. Now, if it's through the nurse partnership piece, then I think that may be something that we need to look at rather than just saying that city council, one of their goals is to reduce the ACE scores. I don't know how we do that.
Which bullet are the ACE scores under improve this is
I'm on
under
this
improve
one.
the safety?
I'm on this one.
I'm
It's under improve the safety of Billings.
Fourth one, 1, 2,
Yeah.
3, 4.
It's the, next to the last one. Well, the red.
I'm looking at the May
Draft.
9th, the current version.
Oh,
That-
I have April 27th.
Oh, I'm looking at the 22nd. I'm sorry, 2022 version, so excuse me.
Oh, well, you're way off.
Yeah,
then, aren't
yeah,
you?
way off. Okay, that's why I wasn't
We're
making
online,
sense.
Mayor.
Yeah. I'll get with it.
It was on our memo. It's in our memo.
Yeah. This one is too, it's just I hadn't kept going.
No wonder you
Okay,
didn't know
thank
what
you
I was
very
talking
much. So onward, I think I'd recognize Councilmember Nice, Councilmember Shaw, and Councilmember Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. So I would, I guess I'm going to just say, I think when you talk about the ACE scores, I agree. I think that's, it would be nice to have, I mean, that's a goal. And so I think that's just, then that gives us a goal, and then the nurse-family partnership will be something we engage in to achieve that goal, or we're going to use some parks programming to do something to achieve that goal. So I think it may be said a little bit better than it is in there, as far as maybe looking for activities or programs that would, help reduce the ACE scores instead of us actually reducing them. You're right, because we can't reduce those. On the I'm going to, and this is some of the new stuff. Well, since you brought this up, I'll bring this up too. I think I don't like the wording. There was several wording going back and forth on this bill trust issue, and my thought is I think we need to engage, and we talked about this early on, is we need to engage the whole community, and not just one particular segment of the community, but there's lots of different minorities in our community that are not engaged enough, and so I think we need to find ways to engage them all, not just one. We can start with one, but I think we need to make sure that it's all. And one other issue is I want to ask Chris, this is for you, this is our strategy carried over from 22, and it's still going here, and develop a downtown housing strategy for partnership with Homefront and facilitate 1,000 housing units. So here it's been a year, and I would assume that we should be from 1,000, maybe we're at least in 999. Is there not, I mean, if we keep saying 1,000 every single year, then we're never really achieving anything, or at least have something there says, yeah, 1,000, since 22 we've done 250 or something. I don't know where, every time we have this goal, it'd be nice to know when we're stating the goal, how much left of that goal is. So do you have any idea how much we've done? Because I know we've approved a bunch of units, but.
There have been units approved downtown. I don't recall the number. It's a common conversation when the downtown gets together. I want to say we're somewhere plus or minus 100. Is it maybe approaching 100 units?
Yeah.
I guess what I would say here is, again, it's listed, as you've stated, as a goal, a target. When we provide updates on how progress reports, that's where I would expect, I look to the staff and ask them, okay, can you update us on where we're at?
Yeah, maybe we state a goal by a certain year, 10 years out, something, so we actually have a measurement that we can say. Otherwise, we're never going to know what this goal is. It seems to me like it's a nice goal, but there's no way to know when it started or when it's going to end. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Shaw. Councilmember Owen?
Thank you. Just to give us a place to start, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move to adopt the FY 23-24 City Council goals and strategies. Then if people have adjustments, great, we can have amendments. But I do want to make a case, and the one that I'm going to hone in on is building trust with our Native community. So I think it should be moved. I think it should be moved potentially to building a high-performance organization principled in our core values. I like that it connects with collaboration, with service. And then I'm going to give you guys just a little background. This is an issue I've actually been working on for a couple of years. So I've been part of a board that's its own working group to try and establish a Native Cultural Center in Billings. This work has been ongoing.
Mr. Mayor.
Excuse me?
Point of order.
Yes.
You made a motion.
Yes.
It hasn't been seconded.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
sure.
you. Yeah.
So second, Councilmember Joy? Okay, so go ahead and.
Okay, thanks. So I've been working on this for a couple of years. This is language that without speaking on behalf of this community, they're comfortable with, they like. Building trust, yes, it's not specific, and I think that's a good thing. It's the first time we've had anything like this in our city priorities and strategies, so it's going to be a learning curve for us. The reason I kind of want to bring up a little bit of that background is because I think it's really important that it stays in our priorities and communities, and strategies, but I don't think it's the best place for it is improving the safety of Billings. I think that sends a negative message that this one group is more responsible for safety problems than any other group, which I think it just isn't an area that I think we should be getting into, because I don't think that was the intention at our retreat of bringing this up at all, even though that might be a piece of it. So I would argue that that should be moved to this potentially building trust with our Native community, move to building a high-performance organization principled in our core values. And then the work that I had a conversation with Chris this week about, okay, do I bring forward an amendment or a council initiative form, or what's kind of the process? Because I've been talking with him for about a year about establishing a Native advisory board. So in our conversation, it was, well, if it's part of our council priorities and strategies, awesome, right? Then that's the foundation, we can move forward with that. But to kind of just to let you know that I've been working behind the scenes on that, we'll continue to do that. The plan is to bring that forward for you all to vote on maybe this summer sometime. If you would like to be involved in that process, please let me know, because I'm going to be assembling a working group, including Gavin from the library is going to be the staff point person to kind of help walk through it. So just to provide a little more context to that one, I do think it's important that we keep it in there, but I would move it out of the safety category. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I have quite a few thoughts, so I'll try to be brief. But first of all, I fully agree. I think it's really stigmatizing and uncomfortable to suggest that the lens in which we engage with the Native American community is public safety. It doesn't feel right. And I think, the truth is there are other subpopulations that probably deserve attention. I think Councilmember Joy speaks often about the needs of people with physical limitations and how they're perceived in the community. But just because others need it doesn't mean we shouldn't do this. So I would support moving it to a different category or to its own goal standalone. But I would not, I don't like it under the safety category. I disagree that there are things that council can't do directly to address adverse childhood experiences in the community. I think there's quite a bit. But I also think the phrasing of this highlights sort of a problem with the list. Some of these are things council can do directly, and some of them are community efforts. And all of this collectively is just sort of a random list of things that we thought about once. Especially under the category of safety, we don't have a public safety strategy. And I think we need one. If we're going to have an RFP for any amounts of money, we have to have guardrails around it. I talked about this before the retreat, and I'm going to talk about it again, so I'm going to directly put the question to Chris. I think we need a series of work groups that put together some prioritization on how we think through these topics. I don't like that we have these sub-bullets here, the Family Justice Center, rec programs, because I think they constrain us before we've investigated anything. So I think we need a couple of work groups. I think we need a general violent crime work group because the chief says that's his number one priority. I think we need a family justice and trauma group. I think we need a substance abuse and mental health group. I would like to see a built environment one that is SEPTED, safe routes to school, parks, all those things we do with the environmental impact on crime. And we probably need something on transportation safety that pulls together a number of groups like the suggested Transportation Safety Oversight Committee, the DUI Task Force, these entities that already exist. And I think those work groups need to start developing a strategy on prevention, diversion, incarceration, reentry, all the points of the sequential intercept map. Do you think we need an initiative to do that? Or do you think that, do you agree and that's something you could do of your own accord?
I agree in the broad sense of what you're describing. I am certainly don't have the knowledge and skills to try to tackle that myself as your city administrator. So without question, tapping into both internal resources and expertise, as well as in many of these cases where we're talking prevention, they really are the lion's share of the expertise. The subject matter experts are in other organizations. So I certainly like the idea of what you're discussing. Ultimately, how we resource it, who resources it, will certainly be a part of, I think, ultimately what we work through in the process, as well as both very literally in our budget or just learning as we move forward in the space of true prevention, which is, I think, at the heart of what you're talking about.
I agree, but that's not an answer to my question.
Okay.
Do you intend to convene these work groups, or would you like to see an initiative where council directs you to create work groups? How do we go forward to affect this strategy into something actionable? Because we do have here things that are very broad, things that are very narrow, things that are directly in council's purview, things that require community partners. We need a strategy.
Yeah.
Bless you.
I think there is value in the initiative, because then there's some clarity as to what the expectations are and how to move forward. And I think that will won't eliminate, but I think it will limit the misunderstandings or things as we work this through together as a partnership between the policy body and ultimately staff and community partners to progress.
I appreciate that. So I've had conversations with many of you. I appreciate those thoughts and feedback. I agree. We need stakeholders and council members working together to put together a clear strategy and give us some direction forward. So I would suggest that we strike all those sub-bullets because I think they are too narrow and they're not, they sort of suggest that these are the things we're going to do under those headings. And I agree with Councilmember Shaw's suggestion of moving the Native American community out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Triki, and then Councilmember Ripsis.
Are we actually, it just occurred to me, we've got a motion on the floor.
We do, which is adoption of this document with the one change of moving the Native American item.
All right, then, I totally agree with you that we need to get organized and structured. And that was one of the reasons why I suggested that we hire somebody to do that for us, that, and I still believe that moving forward, that's something that we should do. Given the situation and what happened and whatnot, that is one of the things that I personally went out and tried to figure out is where are the holes and gaps in this area, and so we can figure out what we need to do and how we plug it together. For family and domestic violence, those two projects that are coming together, the Justice Center and the task force being reinvigorated, I think we can leave that in their hands and see how that moves. Obviously work with them and stuff like that. And the traffic safety committee is also doing a really good job of starting to get organized and stuff like that. So I think I wouldn't say let's try to figure them all out. Let's figure out where's the biggest need right now. And from my running around and looking at stuff right now, I would say, I don't know what I would say. I'm not going to say anything.
Okay. Councilmember Ripsis.
Thank you, Mayor. And Chris, I want to kind of tack on to what Councilmember Owen was saying, just in terms of the inconsistency of the goals. And we're also getting into the budget. And when you read through the budget, every department, most every department, has a list of goals. And with few exceptions, they're copied from last year. I'm trying to figure out how this set of council goals and strategies informs the city's goals at the department level. None of them, well, few of them are actually those kind of SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, timely type goals that, any type of corporate operation would strive for. And I don't understand the timing of when we set our goals and strategies, and then we've got the CIP and the budget process, and somewhere in there, the city's departments are also tying goals. How do we get this so that it all works together so that the council can say, these are our priorities for the city, or what our goals are, and then you can use that with your departments to set specific, timely goals that don't just get copied over year after year. And then we can plan a CIP and then a budget with all of that kind of tied together. It seems to be very disconnected and disjointed right now, and I'm just wondering if there are things that we should be doing that, instead of just continuing to try to rehash this document every year, can we get to a place where it's actually useful?
Hopefully we get to a place where it's more useful. Yeah, I would not try to profess that we've got an ideal scenario here as far as timing goes. I think to some degree there isn't one, but certainly we could do better. It would be to finalize this process probably in the fall or before the holiday season rather than at the first of the year. Why? I mean, one driver there would be the budget process for staff really begins right after you come the first of the year. But the capital improvement plan was moved off of that cycle deliberately a couple of years ago. For those who don't remember, it was actually attached to and adopted as part of the budget prior to a few years ago. And so we're always going to be a little bit off there, but I think the budget is that's the policy, one of the most critical policy documents that gets this body makes decisions on annually. So to answer your question, if we can move this cycle to fall, I think it would improve that. And then I would say it's It's an evolution as to what do we want to do with it in this organization. Not very many years ago, it really was just a to-do list. And so it really has depended on, candidly, this body and administration working together to say, what do we want to put a stake in the ground and identify as priorities to focus our attention, both policy and operational. So I'm happy to continue to improve this for the benefit of how it guides us in our budget process, as well as the council. Now, part of that political reality is that cycle of elections every 2 years and changes in those 2 years, and how this body wants to develop a culture relative to what should be the expectation when you step new onto the council. And some years, there have been large changeover of the individual sitting in front of me, and other years there's just one or two. And I think you probably are going to see potentially bigger swings there, depending upon if 1 or 2 is changing or if 4 to 6 are changing. So I think that's a reality of part of the process as well.
Councilor Ripsis?
Thank you. And so, yeah, I kind of agree that fall timing is better. So I might encourage us to just set this aside for now and set up a structure with council that we can actually work through this over the course of the summer and come up with a better document for the fall. But I just wanted to drill in on the department level goals. Again, they're copied over year after year. How does the department level goal planning process work? And how do we set up something that essentially feeds down from our goals and priorities down to the department level?
Candidly, I think it's different department by department. I think the clearer you are and we are of what the policy goals are, particularly at the goal and strategy level, provides clarity to a foundation of what they can build off of internally. So there is not a rigorous, structured goal-setting process across the organization, across all the departments, with alignment with this work. This work I use, and certainly the leadership team, all the department directors are engaged in what this is, and we come back to it throughout the year, and they know, as the policy body, this is something to be keying off of. And so you see that reflected in their goals, but I don't want to overstate it as if there's, a lot of rigor to exactly how that happens.
Thank you. I'll pass it to Councilor Joy, but just before I do that, to comment on Councilor Ripps' point, there's actually quite a bit of alignment when you look at some of these other categories, like invest in core infrastructure, the airport terminal, the Stillwater building, the water treatment, West End plant, all the 21st Street underpass. All those things are very much reflected in our budget. But it does get a lot fuzzier when we get in this area of public safety and in areas that we are not, we don't have classic department involvement on going out and fixing mental health, for example. So there's certainly good value from some greater focus. Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And I would just like to commend and show my appreciation for the city administrator for having made this goals and strategies process better and better. Going back to my first year on council, it has improved a lot. And if you guys don't like alphabet soup, you should have tried the first year I was on. It wasn't even like alphabet soup. So I understand that there's always work to be done. This is not something that's fixed and then set in stone and continues to work for decades. It's a constant process of balance. And city administrator's point about changes in council, that's absolutely a big part of what changes in terms of priorities from this council. But there are certain continuities. But I would like to say that, without it ever saying on any priority list that I remember, composting, and it's coming to fruition. Resilience and water, it's coming to fruition. And I don't always remember that it made our priority list. I think the staff and division, or department heads hear very clearly what we talk about. And it does come to be without ever making it onto our alphabet soup up here. So I just think our process is getting better, and if we change the time of the year that we do it and how that might get reflected in departmental goals, that's another improvement, and that would be a good thing. But I do want to echo what the mayor said. When you get into areas of public safety, it gets much more difficult for us to be able to say, can the police department's goals reflect what we're asking for? Probably not, because it's not in there. It's not in what they actually do. So I hear that comment too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Shaw, Councilmember Purington.
Thank you. After listening to Councilmember Ripsis, I was going to withdraw my motion, but I think I will leave it on the table for now, unless there's a strong consensus that wants to push it off. But I would say I do agree with you on the timing. So I'm just thinking ahead, thinking, what if for this next year we plan, January early retreat, because you're going to get some new council members no matter what, and do this work, but then next year, the expectation is we're going to spend some time really refining this and talking about the process of how we want to deal with what this should exactly look like. Because I agree with Denise, this has gotten better and better. My first year in council, I think we had a list of like 150 things, and it was like, put them in order. And we were all like, oh, how do you do this? So it's definitely much, much improved from even just a couple years ago. Not to say I think we can get better. I personally would like to see this adopted, though, before we really get deep into the budget, because I think it is an important guiding document.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Purington. Councilmember Owen?
Well, I don't know what you were going to say.
I was going to respond to Councilmember Shaw's questions.
Oh, okay. Well, I would like to make an amended motion, because I agree with Tom. I think we talked about this last year, is that we've tried, well, I'll make the motion that we put this on hold, possibly look at the working groups that Councilmember Owen put forth, and work through this during the summer. I know we're working on a budget, but I think we can work on this as well. So I'll speak to my motion if it's seconded.
Okay, Councilmember Ripsis makes the second.
Is that a substitute motion?
I don't know if it's supposed to be substitute. I think it should be substitute
Yeah, they're
or
both forms
amended.
of an amendment, but
Yeah.
if this passes, the other one goes away.
Okay.
So,
So, in speaking to
go
that,
ahead.
thank you. So in speaking to that, when I first came on council and we started discussing having this priorities, we always wanted it to be council initiated. And I just feel like every year we get further away from it being council initiated. We have someone from outside come in, guide us, and a lot of those issues that we're guided in are things that we're going, where did this come from? So I think there's things that we can work through. Kendra, I totally agree with you. I think that was a great move to move this to the high performance area. I agree with you on that. Kendra's working on some things. I know Danny's working on some things. I mean, all of us are working on different elements. And when do we get together to bring those to fruition other than, oh, let's have an initiative? I think we need to be a little bit more intentional in some of the things that we're doing so that we can set forth, what our goals are. And then we can look at strategies and how they are affected by the budget, or how we can affect the budget. So anyway, I hope that we can do that. We can work on this a little bit better. I agree, I don't keep saying the same ones coming up. So anyway.
Okay, Councilmember Owen, were you next on the list?
Sort of.
Okay, Councilmember Owen and Councilmember Neese?
Well, I think I would ask now this question to either Councilmember Shaw or Councilmember Purington, depending on where we end up. I'm wondering about the willingness of either motion sponsor to eliminate the sub-bullets under the safety, the decrease family violence in the Activate parks, just so that we don't constrain our work any further on just a couple of action items. But then also the interest in adding perhaps a bullet indicating that we will prioritize the development of a comprehensive public safety strategy. So I don't know if either of you have heartburn about that, but I would like to hopefully see some friendly amendments that make it clear that we're going to work on a strategy.
I don't have any heartburn about that.
I have heartburn at a lot of things, Jennifer.
That's not
That's not one of them.
Thank you, Mary, that was it.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Neese and
We won't have to do anything, yeah.
Less heartburn.
Councilmember Neese?
So I like the idea of maybe doing this at different timing. Councilmember Rupes, thank for bringing this up. I think one of the things we have to be careful of though is, we don't direct staff, we direct Chris, but these goals, then he can then direct the staff. And if we don't have those goals in front of him in time when they start doing the CIP and the budget, then it's really it's a whole year behind and it's not as important. So I would like to know in this motion, when you say hold off, wait, how long are we waiting for? Because, Chris, when do they start talking about the CIP? I think it needs to be right. We need to finalize our priorities prior to the CIP, them talking about the CIP. And that. So that's the first part of my question. I've got some others, Mayor, if you don't mind.
Chris, you want to comment on that?
First, specific in reference to the CIP, remember, it's a 5-year rolling plan. So unlike, the budget certainly goes year to year, but I think it's not as critical that you find the perfect timing in front of the CIP. If that were the case, it'd be in the middle of the summer, kind of a thing, which I think won't be a great time to do this. The idea of waiting till January, I would argue is that's what has happened in the past, and that quickly becomes February or March, which falls into this cycle that we're at. So I think you either want to, what we've done with the CIP is our goal very deliberately is to have the CIP adopted before new people are seated on the city council. And the reason for that, and I think this document fits it, is if you are brand new seated on the city council and there's a $500 million document you're being asked to adopt and you're X weeks into your role, that's not a comfortable position to be in. So I think you want to have it so that it is adopted before the holiday break, because every other year you're going to have some new people at the table. And you're not trying to thwart their impact. Hopefully, frankly, the opposite, to give them some breathing room going forward.
Sometime in the fall.
Yep.
That's what you're saying.
Okay, so I guess that's what I'm asking from the movement. And the second is, can you give us a date or time so it just doesn't fall on hold and now it's dropped until next year?
Yeah, Councilor Ripsich.
I think we aim to adopt it in September.
September?
Yeah.
September
By
1?
yeah, one of the 2 business sessions in September. We vote
Okay,
to
great.
adopt our goals and or strategies.
Okay, so if that makes the motion a little clearer. Thank you, Mayor. I agree. I think that having it in the fall and having a new council member coming on board, for them to have another year, have a year before they actually, or 9 months before they start getting involved in setting their goals is not, I don't think is an issue. And so I support holding this back until then, and then actually not just holding it, but maybe working with it a little bit more. And adding some of the things, changing some of the things that were talked tonight. And then I'll say one more thing, Mayor, because I think Councilmember Perrin asked a question, when do we talk? But these are our work sessions. That's when we do that. Every work session we have at the end of the work session, council discussion. Those are the times to bring that up. If you want to talk about this on council discussion, bring it up and start talking about it. If the rest of the council members want to join in, we can talk about it and have another hour meeting on it. But it just depends on how we want to do it. So that's the time to bring it up. It doesn't have to be on the agenda. We just talk about it and start addressing it. But thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I am a little concerned about just talking about stuff, though, that's not on the agenda from a legal perspective. So I don't know what council discussion really is, frankly, but that's always been that's another topic. That's something that could be changed, I guess. But one way or another, I think we need to be doing some things informally in the way of working this. If you've got specific changes, it's only whatever it is, 3 or 4 page document. Let's get those changes circulated by email, and it may may evolve more or less naturally, but we can do that. Council Member Joy, and then council, we should move to a vote so we can wrap up this meeting.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. The reason I will not support the motion to put this off is because one of the constraints for every single thing on this priorities list is how do we fund it? Yet, we want to have goals and put it in a process where what we need to be discussing is the goals so that the budget does reflect that. So why is putting it off better? It isn't. It's worse. Because having these goals helps us to see where they fit with our budget. So I can't support something that doesn't really make good sense to me. The budget is a reflection of our priorities, but we won't have our priorities till after we pass the budget. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. They need to be before we do this, and I can see that in some future year, this process can be timed differently, but we need to have it now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Trickey.
2 quick comments. One, what I'm watching here right now is one of the reasons why I hate term limits, because it takes a while for people to learn how to do their jobs and groups how to work with each other in order to do their jobs. So I'm very happy with what I'm seeing here. I want to say this, I like the timing, because essentially what we're doing is we're finishing a budget cycle and then starting the next budget cycle by saying, what are our goals? So we can immediately go from what we learned to, what do we want to do better next year? So I really like the timing of this.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, ready to vote? Okay, motion again is substitute motion to just adjourn this, delay this for the time being with the general goal of aiming for completion in the fall and especially September. But I'm just not including that as part of the motion. I think the motion is just to delay this tonight to a later time to be determined. Okay, if the motion is clear, if you agree with the motion, then if in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Voting in opposition, were Councilmember Joy, and she did it very loudly, so it's, and Shaw.
We'll give her 2 points.
Yeah, you get 2. That's good for several votes in opposition. Extra credit. It's still passed. So 9-2, and yeah, we just don't want it to fall through the cracks. So thank you very much, everybody, for the discussion. That completes item number 4. Our last item, legislative update, item number 5. Council, how do you want to proceed? We can take a break. Okay, we'll take a break. It is 7:37. We have a request. Let's try to wrap up as soon as we get back. No later than 7:45. We'll get started.
Oh, I thought you were going to wrap up.
Squeeze on in there. Okay, we're back. The only problem is our presenter on this item, I think, is our city administrator. Item number 5, legislative sessions update. I guess, Tony, can you officially read item number 5?
There are no updates. Shoot, he's here.
Yes. It's over. It's over. Oh, it's over, and we survived. Chris, is that you got anything more to it than that? I bet you do.
I'll just add one item, which is House Bill 5 does include some specific dollars for the reservoir project. So we're grateful for that, but it has not, to my knowledge, it has not been signed yet, so it's not completed, but it is through the legislative process. So we do have a call. The legislative group is meeting on Wednesday. Our lobbyist, Amy Gramales, will be a part of that call. She has walked through the process with me. The governor can line item veto, but what I don't know is I don't know the timeline. I don't know if there's a timeline by which the governor has to sign the few hundred bills. So that's the only one I'll highlight. We'll move on from there.
Thank you, Chris. We had a Montana League board meeting today that focused on legislative update. The league has a very good list of the items that they supported, opposed, and the final result of that. If I have not distributed that, I'll try to find that and distribute that. On House Bill 5, the comment was made that although the governor can exercise line item vetoes on that, he can't redirect those dollars to a different place. So if an item is vetoed, the funds are freed up, but they just go into the general fund. They don't go someplace else. So, which may be relevant to all of this. So, thank you everybody who worked on the session, and it was an eventful one. I don't know if members of the committee or others just want to ask questions or have particular comments about particular pieces of legislation, but if so, this would be your opportunity to do so. Councilmember Neese?
Thank you, Mayor. I think this Wednesday when we meet and in the months to come is we're going to be going through some of those bills and talking to staff, seeing how they're going to impact the city. So we'll be talking about some of those things in our meetings. So stay tuned and read our minutes from the meetings.
Yes, thank you. I'll just comment, the council member, or former council member, now Representative Mike Yakowicz, sent around a thank you note that I think everybody has seen, asking or expressing his appreciation for city staff and for the council's support of his House Bill 534, raising the jurisdictional limit in municipal court from $9,500 to $25,000. And we do want to express our appreciation for Representative Yakowicz for leading that fight, because it's going to make it a lot easier to conduct our abatements and get move those through quickly in municipal court so they don't have to go to district court, and make it easier for the city to recover its costs much more effectively, much more cost effectively, and much faster, which will probably get the attention of some landlords. So that's good. There was a hand, Councilmember Owen?
I just had a question. Chris, I don't know if you can answer this, or Roy, if you can, but typically in the last few days of session is when all of the sort of study bills get passed, when we sort of know what the interim committees will be and what the interim topics will be. Do we have any insight on what they'll be focusing on in kind of the local government area for the interim?
Councilmember Owen, I do not, because I'm concerned that there were plans to do a number of those, that when they adjourned somewhat abruptly, that some of those didn't happen. I actually would look to the league. And then I'm actually hosting a meeting Thursday afternoon and Friday. We've got 15 people registered to come to Billings, predominantly city managers around Montana and the League of Cities, to specifically focus on the session that just ended and begin preparing for 25 and 27. So that's certainly one of the areas we will talk about and get an update on if it's not already in the update from the league.
Perfect, thanks.
Yeah. Very good. Anything else, comments or questions? Okay, that concludes item number 5. Is there any public comment on items not on our agenda? Mike, if you could introduce yourself and tell us where you live.
Good evening. My name is Michael Mayotte. I live at 123 Lewis Avenue. A couple comments I want to make before the city council tonight. First, I want to recognize Councilman Rupes. I had the pleasure to be with him on Thursday night when there was a Rotary International Foundation representative in town, and Tom hosted him around, and his knowledge of the city, how the city's come together, and how he conveyed this to this gentleman from Chicago left an amazing impression on him. And I spent the rest of the weekend with that gentleman at the Rotary Conference up in Miles City. So thank you very much for your hospitality. Eric was truly impressed. Throwing my hat on, the Executive Director of Amen Park, I just wanted to give you an update on how our partnership works and how things go. 2 weekends ago, the weekend of April 29th to 30th, we hosted the annual Magic City Soccer Classic sponsored by Stockman Bank in Billings. The first thing I'd like to recognize is the fact of how the police department, how the Parks Department, Amen Park Development Council worked together to pull off a flawless, beautiful tournament, and thank God for sunshine. Sunshine makes everybody feel better. But I'm an accountant. I like numbers, and it's just math. This is the largest tournament ever held at Amen Park. There were 170 teams. Average number on the team size was 13, which would give us 2,210 participants, athletes, okay? Using the Chamber of Commerce's numbers, taking 2.5 people per player, we had 5,525 people attending this. Out of that, my numbers are 4,000 came from outside of Billings. Okay, those people that came from outside of Billings, if you take the numbers at 2.5 with 303 players from teams, the economic impact in 2 days was $454,500. Not a bad return for the investment that this city makes in Amen Park. Our concession stand alone hit it out of the park. We had a record $10,000 in concession sales over 2 days. We were proud to represent the city, and it was just a great event. And all I kept hearing anecdotally from people from out of town is, this is great. It's a great place to be. They enjoyed it. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for your support and let you know what's going on.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you for the whole organization. You've invested many years, so keep it up. And we promise you the same weather next year. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. Any other public comment? Okay, we'll close our public comment period. Next item up are council initiatives. Councilmember Treaky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, I put before you an initiative. Basically, it is to give a donation to the Billings Area Family Violence Task Force in order to help them move forward in their current work. Basically, the reason we came to the number and the idea that we did on this was looking at the stuff that the current organization has right in front of them right now, which is like giving out or reprinting these policy guides. I can get more if anybody wants a copy of it. This is the 2019 version. If you remember, we had a Vista in front of us that kind of kicked off this conversation a couple of months ago when she was talking about the Justice Center, the Family Justice Center. So anyway, that's that. So the idea is to give them some money so that they can print those things, do some more updates into the website, and also help them raise money in order to do their annual conference, which is in September. So there. Any comments, questions? Should I just make a motion?
So just to kind of procedurally, this is to get it on the agenda. It doesn't make the decision. It just puts it on the agenda for future purposes. That's correct?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we can spend money today, right? Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Okay, so there's no, was that a motion, or is this just leading up to a motion, or I missed that?
I mean, if there's conversation, anybody wants to say anything, that was what I was holding back.
Okay, well, in case it changes the direction of the motion, we'll just leave this as general discussion and have a motion later.
Okay.
Councilmember Joy, Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just want to have one question for Councilmember Tricky. $15,000 is that just for the printing of the copies? I mean, how is that $15,000 going to be spent?
No, it is, so right now, the estimate of the copies of the thing, the next version of the resource guide, I believe, is 8,000. And there's like about another 1,000 they need for the fold-up guide. And they also need money to, for the conference. So that's, and also they need to modernize the website. So all of those different projects are the projects that are currently going on. And the reason I'm asking for us to fund it is so that they can just get the work done and not focus on fundraising right now. There's another initiative that they are also working on at the same time, which would be to do some capacity building and figure out how to raise the money themselves to maintain a staff. So this is basically, let's just get the immediate need out of the way. And not only that, but how it goes on into the future is also going to be informed by the consultant that's coming in to talk to help figure out how to create the Family Justice Center, which these departments did self-finance this year. They pulled out the money to do that, which is one of the reasons why they kind of need this.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Boyette, and then Councilmember Purinton.
Thank you, Mayor. Don't take this wrong, but if we're going to spend $15,000, I would like it to go directly to the people who need it. That's my opinion. That's what I think the money was for, not to be buying booklets. I'd rather have it go to the crisis center or the mental health center that will actually do something. So I understand the need for this, but I don't know that that's my idea of what the money the public voted for. Thank you.
Councilmember Purinton?
So, Danny, a couple of questions. Currently, this task force, what kind of money do they currently have in their coffers?
I'm trying to remember. I heard the report the other day. Do you know, it's less than 5,000. I think it was like around 3,000. And usually they do fundraising and look for sponsorships and stuff like that over the summer. And they do it again whenever they print out the booklet and stuff like that. So, I mean, if you look at this one, you'll see that, for example, Alternatives is on here as a sponsor. So I assume that they got some of that money from there.
Okay, so, and then one other question is, we're putting money towards this McGuire conference. I've not ever heard of that, so I'm not sure. And with the booklet, I understand it's for, I think she was a doctor as well, Dr. McGuire, that was killed due to domestic violence. So, but I don't know what that conference is. I don't know what it takes up. And so you've already put about $9,000 on the table. So that leaves us with 6, and I'm just kind of wondering, I'm kind of like Mike, I don't know where that money's going to go.
Yeah. This will be the 33rd conference. One of the issues that I, as a systems person, have with where they're at is that the task force originally was started by the community. The people who work in the area took it over and continued to run it. They never got staff or anything like that in place. They never did anything for ongoing fundraising. So So because it was people who were working in the area 5 years ago, when the numbers started going up in domestic violence, the organization really started to fall apart because they were so busy dealing with the problem itself. And literally over the last couple of years, all they've done is to maintain having that conference that's in there. So they're happy to come and talk to us and tell us what they're doing and how it's up and stuff like that. I'm just basically queuing it up for them.
Okay, thank you. Other questions for Danny? I guess I'll just ask, I think it's a good idea to, this is very much the core of our public safety problem. It makes me a little nervous. Seems like we're just the sole funder, whether it's parks or anything else. I'm kind of a fan of more skin in the game personally. Would they be open, do you think, if we just matched, offered a $7,500 match, dollar for dollar? If they raise $7,500, then they got their $15,000, and we put in the other $7,500.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they were planning on doing fundraising for this. I simply said, let me see what I can get out of council so that you can focus more on how we build the organization to move it forward. Elsewise, they're going to be spending the entire summer worrying about the conference and raising money and getting the books out, so.
Okay, thank you. There is no motion on the floor, so based on this discussion, did you want to make a motion? Somebody else want to make a motion?
Sure. So I move to request staff to put an allocation for $15,000 from the prevention fund on the agenda as a donation to the Billings Area Family Violence Task Force. Enough?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Joy. Discussion now on the motion. Councilmember Purinton.
Well, I guess at this point, I would not be supporting moving this forward. I kind of feel like some of the others, we're the sole fundraiser. I think maybe we need more information about it if they maybe wanted to come to a work session and explain, but I'm not ready to put $15,000 towards this task force at this point.
And just to clarify, if this motion passes, you're not. It's just putting it on the agenda, but I understand you're going beyond that. So, Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. The only thing I see on this is that we don't have a public safety strategy to spend the 2 mills, so we have Danny who's finding things that do it. And so I think we need to come up with a strategy. Having to continually find initiatives from council to do this is not a strategy. And so I think we need to hold off spending that money until we can come up with a strategy and find out what is it we're going to do. And so, yeah, I would love to see an initiative to say, hey, let's get a strategy to start spending this money that we're taxing people for, that we're not spending.
Thank you, Councilmember Tricky.
I thought we just did that. I thought, by sitting down and saying, let's do a council-driven process to look at our goals and strategies, that we just agreed that we were going to start doing that.
Initiate the process, but not completed it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is government work. Nothing gets completed without 20 meetings.
Okay. Councilmember Neese? Councilmember Owen?
Yeah, so Danny, I think what I'm talking about is specifically the 2 mills. And when I spoke about the 2 mills before we even raised it, I said we need a strategy before we and ask for it, and we don't have it. So yes, I agree that there's a public safety, a greater public safety strategy that we need to develop, but specifically we need to decide where it's a strategy for spending the marijuana money and the strategy for spending the 2 mil money that we are taxing. So I think both of those, that's what I'm talking about. What we moved off to September was more of a general council strategy. It could include some of that, But I think until we actually have a strategy of what we're going to do with these type of funds, we need to hold off on those and start really focus on, what is going to be the best way to accomplish our goals overall, but using those as a strategy.
Okay, Councilor Rowan, but could you just answer the factual question of when the conference is? Do you know?
It's the end of September.
End of September. Okay, thank you. Councilor Rowan, did you?
Thanks, Mayor. I'm having a hard time with this initiative because I'm generally for this type of work. There are, I guess, a couple of things that I would just throw out for consideration. I think that the resource guide, whether it's print or digital, the one that exists is woefully outdated. To the point it's not even useful. And I think for the good of the community, I have no problem if we fund this in its entirety because it is a necessary thing. We know that survivors need resources. Our crime statistics will improve as survivors are able to access the services they need to be safe and stable. So that component of this initiative, I'm supportive of. I'm more concerned about the conference. And the reason I'm raising this now, even though this is only a procedural step, is it seems to me like when we say, all right, we'll put an initiative on a future agenda because we want to talk about it, we never get to talk about it. It just shows up on a consent agenda later and we all have to vote for it. And I'm not ready for that yet. I want to work on this. I am fatigued, as I think many of you are, about getting in the middle of social service sectors that are not aligned around the same set of goals. And I am concerned that this conference has that same polarizing impact in the domestic violence community. So until I know more, I'm not ready to vote. And I'm afraid that if I vote to put it on an agenda, we'll never get a chance to come back and have the discussion. So I think we should support the printing of the resources. I think whenever we can vote on that, we should. The conference and the general, how we work with the task force needs more time and consideration. So I just put those out there for people to consider in this adoption tonight.
Thank you. Councilmember Joy?
Thank you. I would consider that maybe you could amend your motion to not $15,000, but to the cost of printing the guide and having those who are responsible for that to come forward and talk about the cost of printing the guide and remove the conference contribution, but not take away the possibility of us doing a matching from fundraising. So if they match fundraising, we match fundraising, that kind of thing, but to prioritize the printing of the guide. Thank you.
Which was $8,000, Councilmember Tricky. How confident are you in that number?
I'd have to look it up. I would have to look it up. And I do want to make, I would have to look it up, and I also want to make the point that while I love printed guides, I think they're important. One of the things that they're currently working on is, so they had a digital version of it, which was a Microsoft Word document, so.
Is that up to date?
That is what is well, no. The Microsoft Word document is no longer being used. We are working on a database that will be online, that will be updatable on a regular basis.
Okay, further.
So those would be the two things that I would say, that I would say, the printed and the web versions of the guide. And I'm fine with that. I am fine with that. I mean, I have this process, the way that I've been doing it is throwing this stuff out to you guys and waiting for comment, so you can think about it and stuff like that. And I totally agree we need a strategy. I have no problem with that. I totally agree. But we're also wasting time. Lives.
So the motion at this point is for the full $15,000 just to go on the agenda, again, for further discussion. There was a suggestion, but not a motion to amend that to be something that would only put on the agenda the printing, which we anticipate will be approximately $8,000. I guess you could cap it in any event. And I assume that would also allow for further discussion about these other topics like the conference. So that's where we're at, is my understanding. Councilmember Joy? And then Councilmember Shaw?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'd like to amend the motion to direct staff to allow us to think about the cost of printing the guide, and the possibility for us matching any fundraising they do dollar for dollar.
On the guide or on things beyond the guide?
On things beyond the guide. So give them the incentive to go out there and fundraise beyond what they would. And whether the conference is aligned with our priorities, it would really be whether or not they did the fundraising for it, and then we could decide if we wanted to match that amount.
Okay, so hopefully people understand that. It's a little, I'm not quite sure when we put these things on the agenda with such specificity, right? But it would focus on the printing of the guide, probably around the $8,000 and a match beyond that to some extent. Councilmember Tidswell and Councilmember Shaw? So, I'm sorry, I recognize Councilmember Shaw first. Is it? Okay, Councilmember Tidswell
I want to clarify
first.
something, yeah. Is there an additional cost that we're not absorbing to have the data updated for the printing of the book? Is it already done, finished?
No, so Ellie Stanton, the Vista, who came before us and talked about the Family Justice Center, she's actually working on that right now.
Okay.
So that data is being updated.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Shaw.
My suggestion was just going to be, yeah, if
And I apologize, there was a formal motion, I never got the second on it, so I should do that. Is there a second to Councilmember George? Councilmember Tidswell, okay, thank you very much. And now, Councilmember Shaw.
I like the amended motion. I was going to try and come up with something like that. I think going forward, it sounds like we have some consensus around, let's print this guide. That needs to happen. The website needs to be updated. Seems like where we're not so sure is the conference, any additional funding. So I would say if you can have people come to whenever this is on the agenda and talk to us maybe a little bit about what that is, because I don't know anything about it myself. And so I think that would be a good learning opportunity for us. And if they have some surety that we are committed to being a partner in, some key ways, and then we want to learn more.
Okay.
That's what I would like to see.
Any other, Councilmember Puritan?
Well, just a comment. So you're talking about 3,000 of these. That's right now a cost of $8,000. I don't know if that is a true cost right now. If it's updated, this may be half. But then you also had that additional pocket guide in the website cranked into this. So if you're just talking about the bound print, the resource guide, I guess that's one thing. So I'm not clear if there's a cap, as the mayor had suggested, on what that match would be, regardless of whether or not doesn't cost as much to do the print, and then you go someplace else with it, or?
Sure, my interpretation was there's no cap built into our motion. This is just to put it on the agenda. I'm just trying to be informational that the number that we had heard was 8,000, but obviously we don't know.
Yeah, and to be clear, Lisa, can't think of her last name, has already gone through a bidding process and has already gotten, and already knows and has identified who it is. I just don't remember the numbers off the top of my head. But I do know that the original 10,000 that I asked for would cover printing the guide, printing this guide, and doing the updates to the website. And the pocket guide, Zonta actually already said that they would cover that.
Okay. Anything further, council? We have a motion on the table before we proceed to a vote. Yes, I guess it, yeah, is there really any difference once we approve this amendment? Let's call it a substitute motion.
Okay, substitute
If that,
motion.
yeah, and that means that whatever was underlying goes away if this passes. So is the motion clear or clear enough? Okay, so if in favor, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Voting in opposition were council members Neeson, Purington, and Boyette. So the motion passed 8-3, and we'll leave it up to staff to find an appropriate time on a future agenda. Anything else in the way of initiatives? Thank you very much. We're adjourned. Have a good evening. See you tomorrow.